The moment the cold steel of the handcuff snapped onto her wrists, the officers thought they were closing another routine case. They believed they were arresting another shoplifter at the sprawling Greenwood Mall, just another number in their daily tally. What they didn't know was that they had just arrested their own captain. They had no idea that in putting her in cuffs, they were kicking a hornet's nest that would bring an entire corrupt enterprise, years in the making, crashing down around them. And they certainly had no clue that the woman they were publicly humiliating was about to become the very instrument of their downfall. This story follows the harrowing ordeal of a decorated police captain, a black woman who dedicated her life to the law, only to find herself on the brutal receiving end of its most prejudiced impulses. It's a story about the fight for justice when the system designed to protect you is the very one you have to fight against. Captain Denise Carter was a pillar of her community and her department. With 20 years of decorated service, she'd built a career on integrity, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the people she served. She wasn't a desk jockey. She came up through the ranks, working patrol, then homicide, before her sharp instincts and leadership earned her the gold bars of a captain. Her office walls weren't just covered in commendations for bravery, but with crayon-drawn pictures from her 2 kids and thank-you cards from community leaders. She was known for her calm demeanor, a steady presence in the most chaotic of storms. She had mentored dozens of young officers, teaching them that the badge was not a symbol of power, but a mark of profound responsibility. To her subordinates, she was firm but fair. To her superiors, she was a reliable and professional individual. To her family, she was just Mom, the woman who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and never missed a school play. On this particular Saturday afternoon, she was deep in mom mode. Her daughter, Chloe, was turning 16 in a week, and Denise was on a mission. The only thing Chloe wanted was a specific, hard-to-find vintage-style dress from a boutique called Elysian, a high-end store in the busiest wing of the Greenwood Mall. After a long week of budget meetings and personnel reviews, Denise was looking forward to the straightforward, everyday task of shopping. She left the precinct, trading her crisp uniform for a comfortable pair of jeans, a simple gray hoodie, and sneakers. She was off the clock, just another citizen, another mother on a weekend errand. As she drove towards the mall, she thought about the surprise on Chloe's face when she saw the dress. It was a moment of quiet domestic peace, a stark contrast to the world of crime and consequence she navigated daily. She had no way of knowing that her 2 worlds were about to collide in the most violent and public way imaginable. The Greenwood Mall was bright, loud, and swarming with people. Denise navigated the crowd with practiced ease, her mind focused on one thing, Elysian. The boutique was exactly as pretentious as she'd imagined, with minimalist decor, ethereal music, and price tags that made her wince. But Chloe would love it. The moment she stepped inside, however, the atmosphere shifted. It was a change so subtle that many might have missed it, but for Denise it was as palpable as a drop in temperature. A security guard, a burly man with a crew cut, had been standing near the entrance looking bored. As soon as Denise entered, his posture straightened. His eyes locked onto her. Denise had felt this gaze 1,000 times in her life, long before she ever wore a uniform. It was the look of assessment, of suspicion, the look that silently asks, "Do you belong here?" She did what she always did. She ignored it. She was a customer on a mission. She began to browse the racks, her fingers gliding over silks and lace, looking for the dress Chloe had circled in a magazine. The guard started to move, not obviously, but shadowing her from a distance. When she moved to the back of the store, he suddenly found a reason to inspect a fire extinguisher on the back wall. When she lingered near a display of expensive handbags, he was there, pretending to straighten a nearby mannequin. Denise's police training kicked in, her mind cataloging his movements and posture. But it was her life experience that translated the data. This was racial profiling, plain and simple. A bitter, familiar anger began to simmer beneath her calm exterior. She was Captain Denise Carter, a woman who commanded over 100 officers. Yet in this store, in her hoodie and jeans, she was just a suspicious black woman. She found the dress. It was perfect. She checked the price tag, took a deep breath, and decided Chloe was worth it. She also picked up a small, inexpensive silk scarf near the register. She walked to the counter, smiled at the sales associate, and paid for both items with her credit card. The associate placed the dress in a large garment bag and the scarf in a small paper bag. Denise tucked her receipt carefully into her purse, took her bags, and headed for the exit, relieved to be leaving the oppressive atmosphere of the store. The security guard watched her every step. She was just 3 feet from the exit when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Ma'am, I need you to stop right there." Denise turned. It was the store manager, a thin woman with a severe haircut, her arms crossed tightly. The security guard who had been tailing her now stood beside the manager, blocking her path. "Is there a problem?" Denise asked, her voice even. Years of de-escalation training were second nature. "We have reason to believe you have merchandise in your bag that you haven't paid for," the manager said, her voice dripping with accusation as she eyed the small paper bag in Denise's hand. A cold knot formed in Denise's stomach. This was the script she had seen play out countless times from the other side. "I can assure you you're mistaken," Denise said, holding up the bag. "I just purchased this scarf and this dress. I have the receipt right here in my purse." "I'm going to need to see the contents of your bags and your purse," the manager demanded. "I'm not going to do that," Denise stated calmly but firmly. "You have no legal right to search my personal belongings. I've paid for my items and I'm leaving. If you believe a crime has been committed, you should call the police." It was a test, a by-the-book response. She knew her rights, but her calm, informed reply seemed only to infuriate them. "You see, she's refusing to cooperate," the security guard said to the manager, puffing out his chest. "That's what they do when they're guilty. Either you show us what's in your bag, or we'll have you arrested for shoplifting," the manager threatened. The scene was starting to attract attention. Shoppers slowed as they passed, their curiosity piqued. Phones began to emerge from pockets. Denise felt a hot flush of humiliation. To be made a public spectacle, accused of something so demeaning, was galling. "I've done nothing wrong," Denise repeated, her voice now edged with steel. "I have my receipt. I am leaving now." She took a step towards the exit. That was her mistake. The security guard moved to block her physically, extending his hand to do so. "Don't touch me," Denise said, her voice low and commanding. The captain in her was surfacing. The manager, seeing things escalate, made a decision. "That's it. I'm calling the police," she snapped, pulling out her phone. "We've got a hostile shoplifter resisting." Denise stood her ground, her heart pounding with anger and disbelief. It felt surreal. In minutes, officers from her own department, men and women who would snap to attention in her presence, would be arriving to arrest her based on the prejudiced assumptions of a store manager and an overzealous guard. The wait for the police was both agonizingly long and terrifyingly short. The manager and guard stood like sentinels at the door. The crowd of onlookers had grown, a semicircle of faces, their phones held up like digital pitchforks. Finally, 2 uniformed officers pushed their way through the gawking crowd. Denise's heart sank. She recognized one of them instantly. Officer James Raines. Raines was a problem. He had a reputation for being aggressive, for escalating situations, and for a stack of civilian complaints thick enough to stop a door. Denise already had him on her radar for a formal review. Raines strode into the store with a swagger. He saw the white manager, the white security guard, and the black woman in a hoodie. His mind, clouded by prejudice, filled in the blanks before a single word was spoken. "This is her," the manager said, pointing a dramatic finger at Denise. "She stole a diamond necklace. We saw her slip it into her bag. She's refused to let us search her and tried to run." A diamond necklace. The lie had grown, become more serious. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a malicious fabrication. A necklace? "That's an absolute lie," Denise said, looking directly at Raines. "I bought a dress and a scarf. My receipt is in my purse. This is a simple case of racial profiling." Raines let out a short, derisive laugh. "Yeah, that's what they all say. Let's see your bag, ma'am." This was the critical moment. Denise decided to identify herself to put an end to the nonsense. "Officer," she began, her voice taking on the official cadence she used at the precinct. "My name is Denise Carter. I am a captain with the city police department. You and I work in the same department. She reached slowly into her purse to retrieve her badge. But Rains was too amped up, too eager for a confrontation. "Don't you reach for anything!" he shouted, his hand instinctively going to his service weapon. The crowd gasped. "I'm getting my identification, officer," Denise said, trying to keep the situation from spiraling. "My badge." "I am Captain Carter," Rains smirked. "Oh, you're a captain now? A captain of what, the shoplifting team? I've heard that one before. You think we're stupid?" To him, a black woman in a hoodie couldn't possibly be a high-ranking police official. The idea was so foreign to his biased worldview that he dismissed it as a pathetic lie. He nodded to his partner. "Cuff her!" Denise stood in stunned silence. It was really happening. "Officer Rains, listen to me very carefully," she said, her voice dropping to an icy, dangerous calm. "If you put those handcuffs on me, you are making the biggest mistake of your career." That was the wrong thing to say. For a man like Rains, it was a challenge. "Is that a threat, Captain?" he mocked. "Turn around! Hands behind your back, now!" She couldn't move, frozen in a state of profound shock and outrage. Rains didn't wait. He grabbed her arm, twisted it violently behind her back, and slammed her against a display of perfume bottles. The glass rattled. Pain shot up her shoulder. The cold metal of the cuffs bit into her wrists. The click of the lock echoed in the silent store. It was a sound she had heard thousands of times, but this time it was the sound of her world turning upside down. Officer Rains shoved her forward, parading her through the mall like a trophy. The crowd parted, their phones recording her ultimate humiliation. They weren't just arresting a shoplifter. They were arresting their captain. The drive to the precinct was surreal. Denise sat in the back of the patrol car, hands cuffed painfully behind her, watching the familiar streets of her own city look alien through the reinforced glass. Rains was in the driver's seat, humming to a song on the radio. They pulled into the sally port of the central precinct, her precinct. Rains hauled her out of the car and led her into the booking area. The moment they stepped inside, the familiar hum of the station seemed to stop. Sergeant Miller, a veteran officer with 30 years on the job, was at the booking desk. He looked up, saw Rains, and then saw the woman in cuffs. His jaw went slack. "Rains, what in God's name are you doing?" Miller stammered. Still high on his own authority, Rains puffed out his chest. "Booking a shoplifter, Sarge. Caught her red-handed at the mall. Even tried to tell me she was a captain." He laughed. Miller didn't laugh. He looked past Rains, directly at Denise, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning terror. "Captain Carter?" he whispered. The name, spoken with such shock, hung in the air. Rains' smirk faltered. He looked from Miller's terrified face back to the woman he had just maltreated. He looked at her face. Really looked at it for the first time, not as a stereotype, but as a person. The features, so familiar from department-wide meetings, finally clicked. The color drained from his face. "Captain," he breathed, the word now tasting like ash in his mouth. The entire booking area had gone silent. The news rippled through the precinct like a shockwave. Rains arrested Captain Carter for shoplifting. Panic erupted. Miller was already on the phone, his voice a hushed, frantic whisper. "Get the chief down here now. We have a Code Omega situation." There was no Code Omega. Miller had just invented it. But it sounded appropriately catastrophic. Rains, now trembling, fumbled for his handcuff key. "Captain, I am so sorry. There was a misunderstanding. The manager," she said. His pathetic excuses died in his throat as he unlocked the cuffs. Denise rubbed her bruised wrists, her face a mask of unreadable stone. She didn't say a word. Her silence was more terrifying than any scream. The chief of police sprinted into the booking area, his face pale and sweating. He saw Denise, saw her raw wrists, and then turned a gaze of pure fury on Rains. "What did you do?" he roared. The mistake was known. But for Captain Denise Carter, this was no longer about a mistake. As she stood there, the center of a storm of her own department's making, she realized this was a symptom of a much deeper disease. And she was the only one who could cure it. The chief's office became a frantic hub of damage control. Apologies flowed like a river. The chief, a man named Henderson who prized political stability above all else, was practically begging. "Denise, I am profoundly, deeply sorry," he said, pacing. "Officer Raines has been suspended. We will launch a full internal affairs investigation. We'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Denise sat silently, listening to him talk about discipline, retraining, and managing public perception. He was talking about burying this. He wanted to handle it in-house, to punish Raines and make the problem disappear quietly. "The store manager and the security guard filed a false report," Denise said, her voice quiet but firm. "That's a felony." "Yes, of course," Henderson said, placatingly. "We'll have detectives look into that." "Raines assaulted me," Denise continued, her eyes locking onto his. "He used excessive force. I told him who I was and he mocked me. He didn't believe a black woman in a hoodie could be his superior officer. This wasn't a mistake, Chief. This was bigotry." Henderson shifted uncomfortably. "Denise, Raines is a hothead. He'll be disciplined. He might even be fired." "Isn't that enough?" "No," Denise said, the single word cutting through his bluster. "It's not." She had been listening to the well-oiled machine of self-preservation kicking into gear. And she had made a decision. This raw public humiliation had opened a door. She had always been aware of the rot in the department's corners, but it had always been an abstract issue. Now, it was personal. "How many times has Raines arrested a black shopper at that mall?" she asked. "How many of those arrests ended in charges being dropped?" Henderson looked stunned. I don't have those numbers. Get them," Denise commanded. "I want to know why a store manager felt so emboldened to fabricate a felony charge. I want to know why an officer felt so secure in his prejudice that he could assault a citizen in broad daylight with a dozen cameras on him. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, Chief. This is a pattern, and I'm going to find it." The chief saw the look in her eyes. This wasn't the colleague he could manage with political platitudes. This was the hardened homicide detective she had once been. This was Captain Carter, and she was on a case. "Denise, be careful," he warned. "You start digging around in your own department. You make powerful enemies. The union—" "I'm not afraid of the union," she said, standing up. "I'm a black woman who was just arrested for being a black woman. What I'm afraid of is letting this opportunity slip away." "I'm afraid of letting them get away with it." She walked out of the chief's office. Her resolve had been forged in the fire of humiliation. She wasn't just going to get justice for herself. She was going to get justice for every single person who had been a victim of the same rotten system, but didn't have a badge to save them. Captain Carter knew investigating her own department was like walking into a minefield. She couldn't trust internal affairs. She couldn't trust her fellow commanders. She needed a team loyal only to the truth. She made 2 calls. The first was to Carla Johnson, a brilliant and notoriously tenacious civil rights attorney. Carla had battled the police department in court more times than Denise could count, and she usually won. When Denise recounted the story at a small coffee shop, Carla listened, her expression growing harder with every detail. "They cuffed you?" Carla said, a low whistle escaping her lips. "The sheer, unadulterated stupidity is almost impressive. But the malice, that's the part we go after." "I don't just want to sue them, Carla," Denise said. "First, I need to understand why." This felt organized. The confidence of that manager, the immediate escalation to a felony lie. It was too smooth. "A conspiracy," Carla stated, her eyes lighting up. "You think there's a bigger picture?" "I'm sure of it," Denise replied. Which brings me to my second call. That call was to Maya Lopez, an investigative journalist for the city's leading independent news outlet. Maya had a bloodhound's nose for sniffing out systemic rot. More importantly, Denise trusted her. As Denise and Carla lay out what they knew, Maya was already typing furiously on her laptop. "Officer James Raines," Maya murmured. "Oh yeah, I've got a file on him. Dozens of complaints, but they always get buried. Excessive force, illegal searches, and look at this." She turned her laptop around. On the screen was a spreadsheet she had been building for months. A list of shoplifting arrests at Greenwood Mall. The data was chilling. Over 90% of the arrests targeted black shoppers, and in over 70% of those cases, the arresting officer was either James Raines or one of 3 other officers in his circle. "And here's the kicker," Maya said, pointing to another column. "In almost all of those cases, the felony charges were dropped. The person arrested was offered a deal, plead to a lesser misdemeanor and enroll in a pre-trial diversion program. A diversion program, Carla said, leaning in. Run by whom? No, Maya said, a grim smile on her face. That's the part I could never figure out. A private for-profit company runs it. A company called Justice Solutions, LLC. The three women looked at each other. This was the beginning of the trail. The captain, the lawyer, and the journalist. Together, they were about to pull on a thread that would unravel a tapestry of corruption far more vast and disturbing than any of them could have imagined. Carla Johnson's law office became their unofficial headquarters. Their first task was to dig into Justice Solutions, LLC. It's a ghost, Carla announced after an hour of searching. It's registered to a P.O. box in another state. It's a classic shell game designed to obscure ownership. Meanwhile, Maya put out feelers to her network. She cross-referenced the names of arrested shoppers, looking for anyone who had fought back. I found something, Maya said late one night over a conference call. A young man named Kevin Foster, arrested by Raines at the mall 2 years ago, accused of stealing a watch. He refused the diversion program deal and demanded a trial. What happened? Denise asked. Case dismissed. Reason cited? Lack of evidence. But Kevin filed a complaint. He said the store's security footage would have cleared him, but the mall claimed the cameras were malfunctioning. He also said Raines's body camera was conveniently turned off. The same story, Denise muttered. They told me their cameras had a glitch, Carla jumped in. They're burying the evidence. The diversion program isn't about justice. It's about avoiding discovery. It's about getting a quick, quiet conviction, and more importantly, a payment. A profit-driven arrest quota, Denise realized. But who profits? How much does this program cost? Maya had the answer. I spoke to a public defender. The enrollment fee for the Justice Solutions program is $5,000. Non-negotiable. For a one-day anti-theft class, $5,000. They did some quick math. According to Maya's spreadsheet, Justice Solutions LLC had generated millions of dollars. This is an extortion ring hiding behind a badge, Denise said. Raines and his crew aren't cops. They're collectors. They're shaking people down. They now had a pattern, a financial motive, and a name. They knew Raines and his crew were the muscle. They knew the mall security was complicit. And they knew Justice Solutions LLC was the financial engine. But a crucial piece was still missing. How did the money get back to the officers and mall executives? Unraveling the finances of Justice Solutions LLC was proving impossible through official channels. So Maya started looking at the periphery. Who benefited from the mall's security contracts? I think I've got him, Maya declared, slamming a folder down on the table. Robert Harrison, head of loss prevention and security for Sterling Properties, the company that owns the mall. He sets the policies. Okay, so he's in charge. How do we link him to Justice Solutions? Denise asked. Harrison makes a good living, but 2 years ago, he bought a multi-million-dollar vacation home. Paid cash, Maya explained. I pulled the property records. The purchase was made by a separate entity, Greenwood Holdings Group. Another LLC, Carla guessed. You got it, Maya confirmed. But here's where it gets good. I have a source inside the state's financial crimes unit. I asked him to take a discreet look at transactions involving Greenwood Holdings Group and Justice Solutions LLC. Maya paused. He called me back an hour ago. For the past 3 years, Justice Solutions LLC has been making monthly payments to Greenwood Holdings Group. The payments are listed as security consulting fees. The room fell silent. This was the bridge. So the scheme is simple, Carla said, mapping it out on a whiteboard. Step 1. Harrison instructs his team to target black shoppers to meet performance metrics. Step 2. Denise continued. The mall security makes false accusations. They call in Raines and his crew who are in on it. They make the arrest, ensuring any exonerating evidence like security footage mysteriously disappears. Step 3. Maya added. The terrified person is pressured into paying $5,000 to Justice Solutions to make it all go away. And finally, step 4, Carla concluded. Justice Solutions funnels a percentage of that money back to Harrison through his shell company. And I'm willing to bet Harrison then distributes a cut. of that money and cash to Raines and the other dirty cops. It was a monstrously evil machine that used the color of a person's skin as probable cause and the power of a badge as a weapon for extortion. They had followed the money straight to the heart of the conspiracy. The question now was, could they prove it? Maya's initial reporting on Denise's arrest had been published. It was carefully worded, but it signaled that a deeper investigation was underway. A few days later, an anonymous, encrypted email landed in her inbox. The subject? Greenwood Mall. The message was brief. I used to work there. I know what they're doing. I was fired because I wouldn't go along with it. I have proof. This was it. The insider. His name was David Chen, a former assistant manager for mall security. He was nervous but filled with a righteous anger. I needed the job, David began, his voice barely a whisper. But from day one it felt wrong. We were told to proactively monitor shoppers who fit a certain profile. Everyone knew that meant black people. We had quotas for suspicious activity reports. If we didn't generate enough, our performance reviews suffered. What happened when you pushed back? Carla asked gently. I started questioning it in meetings, David said. I pointed out that we were ignoring actual organized shoplifting rings because we were so focused on harassing black families. One time I refused to write a report on a black man who was waiting for his wife. My boss wrote me up for insubordination. Then David slid a flash drive across the table. This is why they fired me. Before I was terminated, I downloaded everything I could. Internal emails, training manuals, and this. He pointed to the flash drive. It's a memo from Robert Harrison himself. It outlines the new loss prevention initiative. It talks about a partnership with private judicial services to increase operational revenue streams. It's the blueprint for the entire scheme. This was more than a smoking gun. It was a signed confession. But there's more, David said. He played a voice recording from his phone. It was his termination meeting. On the recording, his boss could be heard saying, Look, David, you don't understand how things work. This is a business model. Harrison has an arrangement. We provide the raw materials and everyone gets a piece of the pie. Do you not want to be a part of it? Fine. But you keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you. David had not kept his mouth shut. He had just handed them the conspiracy on a silver platter. As they moved closer to the truth, the system began to push back with increasing force. Denise was called into Chief Henderson's office. He informed her that the internal affairs investigation into her arrest was closed. The finding is unsubstantiated, Henderson said, avoiding her eyes. Raines's actions were found to be consistent with departmental policy. His body camera footage, unfortunately, was corrupted. It was a complete whitewash. That's a lie, and you know it, Denise said, her voice shaking with controlled rage. My hands are tied, Captain, Henderson said. The police union has filed a grievance on Raines' behalf, claiming he's being unfairly targeted. They're threatening to strike. The message was clear. Drop it. The next day, Maya arrived at her office to find that her tires had been slashed. Taped to her windshield was a printout of her article with "Stop Digging" scrawled across it. Carla started receiving dozens of hang-up calls a day. One evening, Denise noticed a black sedan parked at the end of her street. It was there for 3 straight nights. A message. We know where you live. We know where your children sleep. The pressure was a coordinated campaign of intimidation designed to break them. But instead of breaking them, it hardened their resolve. It proved they were on the right track. The police union president went on the news. We have certain elements within this department, he sneered, who would rather attack their fellow officers than do their job. We stand by our officers. They were trying to isolate her, to paint her as a traitor. Some colleagues at the precinct began to steer clear of her. The loneliness of the fight started to set in. Maybe they're right, Denise said one evening, exhausted. Maybe I should just let it go. Carla looked at her, her expression firm. They want you to feel this way, Denise. Isolated and afraid. This is the last gasp of a corrupt system. We have the memo. We have the whistleblower. We are almost there. She's right, Maya added. They're scared. If they weren't, they'd ignore us. This is what happens right before the dam breaks. Their unwavering solidarity was the lifeline Denise needed. She took a deep breath. They had come too far to back down now. The dragon had woken up, but they were going to slay it. The whistleblower's memo was powerful, but they needed something undeniable. They needed the security footage. David, the whistleblower, had told them about the mall's deep archive server, where nothing was ever truly deleted, Harrison's own private blackmail library. Getting a warrant through the police was out of the question. So Carla formulated a bold plan. She drafted a civil lawsuit on behalf of Denise against Sterling Properties, alleging violations of her civil rights. Attached to it was an emergency motion for the immediate seizure of evidence, backed by David's affidavit and Harrison's memo. She argued there was an imminent risk that the defendants would destroy critical evidence. She took it directly to a judge known for his independence. The judge saw the memo, read about the pattern of arrests, and understood the implications. He signed the order. It empowered a court-appointed forensic IT team, accompanied by federal marshals, not local police, to immediately seize the mall's servers. That Friday evening, 2 federal marshals and a team of IT experts walked into the mall's security office and presented the court order. For the next 48 hours, they cloned the deep archive server. On Monday morning, Denise, Carla, and Maya gathered around a large monitor. The forensic analyst found the footage from the day of Denise's arrest. They watched as a high-resolution camera, the one claimed to have glitched, showed a crystal-clear view of the entire store. They saw Denise browsing. They saw her pay. And then they saw it. As Denise looked at her receipt, the store manager, believing she was unobserved, deftly picked up a diamond necklace from a display and dropped it into Denise's shopping bag. A collective gasp filled the room. It was irrefutable, a deliberate criminal act caught in high definition. But that wasn't all. The analyst pulled up other files. Dozens of them. They watched in horror as the same scene played out over and over with different victims. A security guard slips a watch into the jacket of a young black man. An employee dropped expensive earrings into a mother's purse. It was a library of manufactured crimes, an assembly line of injustice. They had it all. The policy, the money trail, the whistleblower, and now the unblinking, undeniable eye of the camera. They had an entire arsenal. Denise could have handed the evidence to the FBI and let the wheels of justice grind slowly. She chose something more dramatic, something that would cauterize the wound in the whole light of public scrutiny. The next city council meeting was on Tuesday. Robert Harrison, the mall's security chief, was scheduled to give a presentation on public-private partnerships in community safety. This was the stage she would choose. Denise used her rank to get added to the agenda at the last minute. On Tuesday evening, the council chambers were half full. In the front row sat Robert Harrison, looking smug. A few rows back, Officer James Raines sat with the president of the police union. They were all there, the entire constellation of the conspiracy, gathered to celebrate their power. They had no idea they were attending their own execution. When Harrison finished his slick presentation, the council president announced, "Next, we have Captain Denise Carter with a report." Denise walked to the podium in her full dress uniform. A hush fell over the room. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I am Captain Denise Carter. For 20 years, I have had the honor of serving this city. But tonight, I am here to report on a profound and systemic failure of that mission. A failure that has turned justice into a commodity and public safety into a criminal enterprise. You could have heard a pin drop. I am here," Denise continued, her voice rising, "to talk about the Greenwood Mall, a place where a criminal conspiracy, orchestrated by mall executives and corrupt police officers, has targeted black shoppers for profit." Harrison shot to his feet. "Mr. President, this is an outrageous and slanderous accusation." "Mr. Harrison, you will sit down," the council president snapped. "Captain, please continue," Denise nodded. "I have evidence of this conspiracy. Evidence of extortion, racketeering, and the systematic framing of innocent citizens. And I would like to present that evidence to you now." She turned and nodded to Maya. In the back of the room, a projector whirred to life and a bright, clear image filled the large screen behind the council members. The takedown had begun. The first image on the screen was Harrison's memo. Denise read key phrases aloud. "Increase operational revenue streams. This wasn't about safety. It was about money. She then put up a diagram showing the financial pipeline from Justice Solutions LLC to Harrison's shell company. $5,000 per person, Denise stated. Millions of dollars extorted from innocent people. Harrison was ashen-faced. Raines was frozen in his seat. Now, Denise said, her voice dropping, for those of you who still believe this could be a misunderstanding, I want to show you their work. The screen went dark, and then the video from the Elysian boutique started playing. The entire chamber watched as the store manager planted the diamond necklace in Denise Carter's bag. A collective, audible gasp filled the room. It was undeniable. It was monstrous. That was me, Denise said, her voice thick with emotion but unwavering. A 20-year veteran police captain. If they would do this to me, who would they not do it to? Then the following video played. And the next, a horrifying montage of manufactured crimes. The watch was planted on the teenager. The earrings dropped into the mother's purse. Each video was a dagger. When the final video ended, Denise stood in silence, letting the weight of it settle. She then looked directly at Officer James Raines. "Officer Raines," she called out. "You swore an oath to protect and serve. You betrayed that oath. You betrayed your badge. You betrayed every citizen in this city." She then turned her gaze to Robert Harrison. "And you, Mr. Harrison, you twisted a position of trust into a weapon for your own greed. You are not a businessman. You are a racketeer." Chaos erupted. But through it all, two plainclothes officers who had entered discreetly were now walking calmly down the aisle. They were not city police. They were FBI agents. One agent approached a trembling Robert Harrison. "Robert Harrison, you are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and racketeering." The other agent walked up to a completely broken James Raines. "James Raines, you are under arrest." The satisfying click of handcuffs filled the chamber, a sound of Judgment Day that echoed far beyond the walls of City Hall. The conspiracy was decapitated, live, for the entire city to see. The story went national overnight. The video of Denise Carter's calm, systematic takedown went viral. The federal investigation that followed was swift and merciless. The other corrupt officers were arrested. Complicit store managers were charged. Executives at Sterling Properties were indicted. Justice Solutions LLC was dissolved, and a massive class-action lawsuit led by Carla Johnson was filed on behalf of the hundreds of victims. Within the police department, the reckoning was just as profound. Chief Henderson was forced into a disgraceful retirement. The police union was left humiliated and weakened. Dozens of officers resigned. The city's trust in law enforcement was at an all-time low, but the person everyone trusted to clean up the mess was the one who had exposed it. The mayor held a press conference. He announced sweeping reforms for the police department, including a new civilian oversight board, mandatory anti-bias training, and a comprehensive overhaul of the Internal Affairs Division. And then he made his most important announcement. To lead this department forward, to rebuild the trust that has been broken, we need a leader of unquestionable integrity. Therefore, I am proud to appoint as our new interim chief of police, Captain Denise Carter. The announcement was met with a roar of applause. Just weeks ago, Denise had been handcuffed and humiliated. Now she was being handed the responsibility of leading the very department that had betrayed her. It was a burden, but it was also an opportunity to rebuild the department in the image of the ideals she had always believed in. The fight had been brutal and lonely, but standing there, she knew it had all been worth it. The story of Captain Denise Carter shows how easily systems of power can be poisoned by prejudice and greed. When faced with a profound personal injustice, she refused to be a victim. Instead, she became a warrior. She used her knowledge, her courage, and her allies to fight back, not just for herself, but for every person who had been silenced before her. Her journey from a handcuffed suspect to the chief of police is a testament to the power of a single, unyielding voice to expose the truth. It shows that real change often comes when brave individuals, allied with fearless lawyers, tenacious journalists, and an engaged community, decide that the status quo is no longer acceptable. Again, while this narrative is fictional, It reflects real battles being fought every day in the ongoing struggle for accountability and justice. It shows that corruption thrives in darkness but withers in the light. Captain Carter's story ended not with an arrest, but with a revolution of accountability that proved that no one, not even those who wear a badge, is above the law. If you believe that courage can change the world and that no one should be above the law, hit that like button to show your support. And for more gripping stories of justice served, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments what part of Captain Carter's journey inspired you the most.